Facts are under attack, and the barbarous tyranny of feelings is ascendant. We will analyze a wonderful Covfefe weekend of some of the fakest news yet. Total self-humiliation by the mainstream media, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, oh my. Then, the great Victor Davis Hanson, VDH, helps us kick off our new segment, This Day in History, on the anniversary of Hitler's dumb decision to challenge the red, white, and blue. Don't be like Hitler. Stick around. These colors don't run. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. You know, there's a meme going around. It's been going around for a while, which is literally Hitler. So you'd say, you know, Donald Trump cut taxes. He is literally Hitler. Donald Trump thinks that Supreme Court justices should respect the text of the Constitution. He's literally Hitler. You know, any trivial thing that you don't like becomes literally Hitler. Well, today is different. We are going to talk literally about Hitler. Today is the anniversary of Germany declaring war on the United States, one of the worst decisions of the war. Victor Davis Hanson, the Martin and Ely Anderson Fellow at the Hoover Institution, has a great new book that just came out about this, The Second World Wars. So we will talk to him. But before we get to Hitler, literally Hitler, we have got to talk about something slightly less awful, just slightly, which is the Democrat operatives who pretend to be journalists on television. Let's begin with CNN.
The CNN exclusive in the Russia investigation. An electronic trail has emerged showing a possible attempt to share hacked WikiLeaks documents with the Trump campaign. Let's get right to CNN's Manu Raju with these breaking details. Manu, what have you learned?
Well, John, Donald Trump, his son Donald Trump Jr., and others in the Trump organization, they received an email in September 2016 offering a decryption key and website address for hacked WikiLeaks documents. Now, this is according to a September 4th, 2016 email provided to congressional investigators by the Trump organization. Now, to put the time frame in context here, this email came months after the hacked emails of the DNC were made public, and 1 month before WikiLeaks began leaking the contents of Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's hacked emails, and shortly before Trump Jr. began an exchange of direct messages on Twitter with WikiLeaks. Now, congressional investigators are trying to determine whether the individual who sent the September email is legitimate and whether it shows additional efforts by WikiLeaks to connect with Trump's son and others on the Trump campaign.
You saw that. That looked like a news report. That sounded like a news report, right? It's got the guy in the suit, it's got the chyrons and the backdrop and everything. It looked like a news report. It reminds me of that stupid ad that CNN put out. It said, this is an apple. It looks like an apple. It is an apple. That's like CNN. But it is that wasn't a news report. Do you know how much of that was true? How much of what they were saying it so soberly, straight-faced, very serious, breaking news, exclusive? Do you know how much of that was true? None of it. That wasn't true. That's fake news. CNN reported that Donald Trump and Donald Trump Jr. were emailed a link from WikiLeaks or from someone connected to WikiLeaks days before WikiLeaks released the batch of emails to the public. So there it is. That's the collusion. We've been waiting for all. Here we finally got the smoking gun. Forget Van Jones said Russia is a nothing burger. Forget James Comey under oath said that most of these stories are nonsense. We've got the smoking gun. So CNN's Manu Raju, Jeremy Herb, they report we now have the first evidence that Trump's campaign was given advanced info on WikiLeaks stolen documents from Democrats. And there's just one problem with that report, which is that there is no evidence that Trump received advanced information on stolen documents from Democrats. Other than that, other than the content of the report, that was totally right. But except for the reporting, that was wrong. But it looked right. It looked like the news. It was on television like the news is. The guys wore suits like the news do. Even the Washington Post, left-wing as can be, democracy dies in darkness or whatever, even they pointed this out. They were the first to call out CNN for this fake report. So CNN reported that the email, the awful email saying that WikiLeaks did all this, was sent on September 4th. That was 9 days before WikiLeaks released it. Turns out, though, the email was really sent on September 14th. That one digit makes a big difference. 10 days later. That was after WikiLeaks had tweeted out the info. This was completely publicly available information. WikiLeaks, the tweet said 678 megabytes of DNC documents from Guccifer, and here's the password, and here's how you unlock it. Right? They gave everything that's in this email that WikiLeaks had tweeted out already. So the email came from this guy, Mike Erickson. And I've never heard of Mike Erickson before. So CNN's report insinuated that Mike Erickson might be a Russian agent. Now, I don't know. I didn't look into the guy, so let's do 5 seconds of research. Turns out he's not. Turns out I'm just getting it in my ear. They're doing 5 seconds of research, and yeah, turns out that guy is the president of an aviation management company. But I guess CNN doesn't have access to Google, or they don't have telephones where they can call people and check any of their facts. So instead, they have to suggest that Mike Erickson is a Russian agent and completely screw up the dates. So it goes from being, I guess, sort of a story to being nothing, to being WikiLeaks sent out a tweet and a Trump supporter forwarded that tweet to them and said, hey, look at this. Like just friends do. It's like a chain email or something. But do not worry, it gets better. Not only were the email dates completely off, undermining the entire story, but as Trump Jr.'s lawyer explains, quote, the email was never read or responded to, which the House Intelligence Committee knows. So Donald Trump Jr.'s lawyer had a masterful response here, and this brings up some questions. He said, quote, the email was never read or responded to. The House Intel Committee knows this. It is profoundly, I've lost his line here. It is profoundly disappointing that members of the House Intelligence Committee would deliberately leak a document with the misleading suggestion that the information was not public when they know there was not a scintilla of evidence that Mr. Trump Jr. read or responded to the email. So not only did they get it completely wrong, there isn't any evidence that they even saw this thing. Now, this raises a question, especially for the political operative types who don't think that there are really any such thing as coincidences in politics. Who leaked it? Donald Trump Jr.'s lawyer says it was a Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee who would have access to this testimony and this information. I suppose it could be that. But as the Daily Caller reported, how CNN got its report so wrong is unclear. So one has to wonder, was it a Democrat on the committee who saw the emails, who heard the testimony, and then that Democrat just got it completely wrong? Or was it a Republican? Was it someone around the Trump administration, the Trump apparatus, who leaked it, knowing that CNN would never do its due diligence, would never check any of its facts, would breathlessly report this thing, and then look humiliated when it came out that this wasn't true? Hard to tell. We're posing two difficult interests against one another: Democrat incompetence and Republican strategy. I don't know. I don't know which one I believe. I guess they're not mutually exclusive. But if I had to gamble here, I would suggest this might have come from the Republicans, because every effect of it was so beneficial. It totally knocked CNN for a loop. Donald Trump was ready to go to slam these people. The Trump lawyer was ready to go to slam them. So I don't know. It looks like they may have gotten taken advantage of. The tactic has been used before. You'll remember on my doppelganger Rachel Maddow's show, she was boasting, we have the Trump tax returns, we have them, someone gave us the envelope. And then when she read it on air, it proved that Trump had paid taxes. It completely destroyed their narrative, and they got had because they didn't do their due diligence, and Republicans planted information there. That might be the case here. I'm not certain of that. It's 55, 45, 60, 40, but I wouldn't be surprised. Now, the fake news does not end there over the weekend. I don't know how we didn't work. We should have come in and done a show. Washington Post does not get off the hook. It's true they called out CNN for pushing fake news, but they don't get off the hook. The Washington Post's Dave Weigel posted a screenshot of an auditorium before a Trump speech. This was a tweet, and he wrote on it sarcastically, packed to the rafters. Do you get it? Because it was empty. That was the picture showed that it was completely empty. So do you get it? It's really funny, isn't it? Except it turns out it wasn't so. Now, as Donald Trump responded, he said, Dave Weigel, Washington Post, put out a phony photo of an empty arena hours before I arrived at the venue, with thousands of people outside on their way in. Real photos now shown as I spoke. Packed house, many people unable to get in. Demand apology and retraction from fake news WAPO. So in his defense, Weigel did apologize. He responded, he said, sure thing, I apologize. I deleted the photo after David Martosco, who's a conservative journalist, told me I'd gotten it wrong, was confused by the image of you walking in the bottom right corner. Now, what that really should read is, somebody called out my fake news, and now I've got to move on to the next dirty trick, so I'll admit that you got me on this one. But, he did apologize for posting it, but his apology missed the whole point. So how did the Washington Post, which reported all of this, how did they respond? How did they cover this little dust up? Here's the headline. Quote, President Trump calls for Washington Post reporter who apologized for inaccurate tweet to be fired. Completely misses the point. It is not just that it's an inaccurate tweet. Sure, it is inaccurate. He posted fake news, but it's the arrogance. It's how smug. It's how condescending. And it's inaccurate. That's on top of it. It's the packed to the rafters. Tee-hee-hee. Isn't that guy? What an idiot Donald Trump is. Tee-hee-hee. But I'm a journalist. I'm from the coasts. I'm really cool. I'm on my computer. I'm so much smarter. That's the fake news. The fake news isn't that the tweet is inaccurate. The fake news is that Dave Weigel is a journalist rather than an activist. The fake news is that the Washington Post is an objective news organization rather than an activist group for the left. Now, by the way, this is a pattern with Weigel. In recent years, he's tweeted out that any who oppose redefining marriage to include monogamous same-sex unions are bigots. He's regularly disparaged members of the conservative movement on Twitter, like Matt Drudge. He violated Washington Post's guidelines, asking journalists to refrain from posting anything that could show bias or favoritism. That hasn't stopped any of the rest of them, so I don't know why we should hold him to particular account. And in Weigel's defense, his job is to mix opinion and journalism. That's in his contract. He has to provide analysis and some opinion. But the reason that the Washington Post has moved in that direction is the reason all news outlets have moved in that direction. It gets views. It's very popular. We like to see some opinion with our reporting. Plain reporting is boring. But that means it's no longer news. It's fake news. Some outlets, like the Daily Wire, not to navel gaze, but we're very straightforward with our point of view. We have a point of view. We have certain political goals. Some are shared, some are different. And we just tell you this is the lens through which we're looking at the world and we're looking at the news. Washington Post doesn't do that. They have pompous, preening, moralizing slogans like democracy dies in darkness. Dave Weigel doesn't even tell you that. The CNN doesn't tell you that. CNN employs, Andrew Klavan calls him Fredo Cuomo, like Chris Cuomo, these Democrat operative hacks, George Stephanopoulos, and they pretend to be news. That is it. If any Democrat tells you that fake news is just an empty slogan or it's just an attack by Donald Trump, that isn't the case. We're not talking even about the stories. We're talking about the attitude of the outlets. Now, for straight-up false reporting, we would have to turn to Brian Ross at ABC News. Ross incorrectly reported on Friday, December 1st, that President Trump directed Michael Flynn to make contact with Russian officials before the election. Now, in reality, not in the ABC reporting, but in reality, Trump had actually asked Flynn to make contact with Russia after the election, when he was president-elect. This is a slight difference. Before the election or once the country has voted him in as president. And it's not just Ross. It isn't just that he misspoke or something, which I think some people tried to say. ABC also tweeted the nonsense. Just in, they tweet, Brian Ross on ABC News Special Report, Michael Flynn promised, quote, full cooperation to the Mueller team, is prepared to testify that as a candidate, Donald Trump directed him to make contact with the Russians. This was liked and shared tens of thousands of times before they had to delete it because it's utterly false. And ABC, for their part, refused to cop to the error. Initially, they said, we're going to offer a clarification. The thing we said isn't true. I just want to clarify. I reported that Donald Trump as a candidate told Michael Flynn to talk to the Ruskies. The one addition I'll make to that is that he didn't do that. That's the one clarification I'll make. But other than that, the story stands. Now, they were widely panned for offering this clarification. So the next day they had to give out a full correction. They admitted error, but only because we've been hammering the drums, only because Donald Trump himself has been going after these Democrat communications operatives who pretend to be journalists for so long. There's another story in the New York Times, just came out, from Donald Trump. He responds, quote, another false story, this time in the failing New York Times, that I watch 4 to 8 hours of television a day. Wrong. Also, I seldom, if ever, watch CNN or MSNBC, both of which I consider fake news. I never watch Don Lemon, who I once called the dumbest man on television. Bad reporting. As a side note, thank you to Twitter for the extra 140 characters. They're making these so much, they're doubling the covfefe of them. So thank you for that. The New York Times ran a report today saying that Trump watches a lot of television and he watches CNN and they're allegedly talking to all these people. Yeah. The New York Times headline is this, quote, inside Trump's hour-by-hour battle for self-preservation. That's the hour by. Now I'm trying to think back on the last 11 months. But 11 months he's been in office since he was inaugurated. He destroyed ISIS within 11 months. He just militarily destroyed them. He got a major tax overhaul passed, repealed the Obamacare mandate, got an originalist on the court, packed the rest of the courts, the lower courts, with originalist judges, has the biggest deregulation program in modern history, net zero new regulations passed per year, despite an average 13,000 or so in previous administrations. It looks pretty good to me. He's handled Syria well, dropped the Moab. He is handling North Korea pretty well. That seems okay. Pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. What else do you want, people? If that's self-preservation, keep doing it, man. Now, the New York Times reporting is not credible because the premise is not credible. By the way, the New York Times last February ran a piece titled, quote, "Trump campaign aides had repeated contacts with Russian intelligence," which even James Comey, no fan of Donald Trump, Democrat hack through and through, under oath, James Comey admitted in the main that report was not true. So, I don't know. The report today is that Donald Trump watches 4 to 8 hours of television. I suppose there's no way to know this. There is a little coincidence here because one time President Trump saw me on television. When we were doing the blank book thing, I complimented him on Fox and Friends, and he tweeted a quote that I had said, and then he next endorsed the book. So I do know he watches these shows sometimes, and I'm very grateful that he does, and thank you again. That was a nice early Christmas present. But I don't care how much TV he watches. I don't care. I'm not convinced it's 8 hours a day, but I certainly don't care. If we get all of these good things, if we get the best conservative legislation in our lifetimes while he's watching a lot of TV, keep it up. Tune in, man. Sounds good. I'll make you the popcorn. Here is former Republican, former Bush speechwriter David Frum explaining what we should take away from all of this fake news.
You asked the question, Brian, given these mistakes, why should people trust the media? And I would say the mistakes are precisely the reason that people should trust the media. The press, the worst mistakes that, again, when we talk about the press, we exclude Fox. We talk about press organizations that have an interest in finding truth. Excluding Fox, the worst mistakes that press organizations have made in the coverage of Trump has precisely occurred in their overzealous effort to be fair to the president.
I'm almost speechless watching that clip. You see, we have to trust the news media because they lie to us. Don't you understand? You're not woke like David Frum. You're probably one of those troglodyte Republicans who's still a Republican and didn't become woke. But David Frum now realizes we have to love the news media and they have to have credibility because they don't have any credibility. And this is the irony of the fake news. That term, fake news, we use it all the time. I think it was actually invented by Norm Macdonald. He used it when he was the SNL guy on Weekend Update. But it became popularized in the days after the 2016 election to make excuses for Hillary's loss. So there was an assistant professor of communications at Merrimack College in Massachusetts, Melissa Zimdars, and she sent around a Google document with all of the fake news websites because it couldn't be that Hillary lost. It couldn't be that America doesn't want her to take away our freedom and shriek for the next 4 to 8 years. It had to be that fake news stole all of it. So she sent out this this Google document, and it had some websites that are pretty kooky, and then it also had regular old websites, so just right-wing websites. The Daily Wire was included on this. We don't run fake stories. We run real stories. We have a point of view, but they're not artificial, They used this because they thought they could discredit the new media, the right-wing media that broke the monopoly of the mainstream media, which used to run the whole show until Fox News, and then it all started to crack a little bit with the internet. It backfired on them. It backfired on them because we can check facts. We have the internet. We have freedom to information. And we looked around and we saw, CNN ran a completely fake story. Washington Post ran a completely fake story. The New York Times ran a completely fake story. And another one, and another one, and another one. Who's the fake news here? And it's stuck to the left wing. It's stuck to the mainstream media because it's true. It's stuck like any other of Donald Trump's nicknames that he gives to people. He had tried out a few on Hillary. He tried low stamina Hillary or this, that, or that. The one that worked was crooked Hillary. It stuck not because he kept repeating it. He kept repeating it because it stuck, because it was true. It rang true. This fake news rings true for CNN in a way that it just doesn't for alternative outlets that don't pretend to be something that we're not. Okay. should we get into our new segment? We have to get into our new segment. We have to bring on the Nazis. There is so much to talk about, but unfortunately, you cannot get that if you are not subscribed to the Daily Wire. So if you are a subscriber, we appreciate it. You help us keep the lights on over here. If not, you've got to go over there right now. What do you get? Well, the conversation is going to happen tomorrow, starring the one and only, the big boss himself, Fox News' Power Player of the Week, Ben Shapiro. So that will be tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. If you want to ask questions of Ben, he's going to sit there for an hour and just answer the questions as they come in. If you want to ask a question, you have to be a subscriber. You go to the chat page at the Daily Wire, and you can ask him whatever you like. Everybody can watch, but few can ask questions. All are called, but many are called, but few are chosen. So go over there right now. If you subscribe, it's $10 a month, $100 for an annual membership. What do you get? You get me, the Andrew Klavan Show, the Ben Shapiro Show. You get to talk to us all in the conversation. Forget all of that. None of that matters now. None of that matters. The mainstream media has collapsed. All CNN is in tears. David Frum is in tears. He said they don't trust us. And you need this. You need this. It's not even a choice, guys. The Leftist Tears Tumbler. Do not drown. Do not be left behind in this torrent of salty, tasty, delicious leftist tears. Go to dailywire.com right now. We'll be right back.